Okay, so our next talker is Fiona McCredie, who is the Program Leader with Cool Soils Initiative. So the Cool Soils Initiative provides a science-backed framework for the food industry to support farmers in adopting sustainable, climate-smart farming practices. By aligning with Australian and global standards, CSI enables integrated sustainability reporting for multinational food companies while providing farmers with benchmark reports on emissions, practices and soil health to guide decision making. With over 20 years in the agricultural sector, Fiona has driven policy, advocacy, strategy and sustainability initiatives, particularly in the grains industry. She led the development of the Grains Sustainability Framework and now works with CSI to collaborate directly with farmers, technical experts and global supply chains to enhance Australia's position as a leader in low emission, climate smart agriculture. Please welcome Fiona to the stage. Did it go forward?
Yeah,
perfect. Big one goes forward.
All right, I'll do my time too. Thank you, and happy World Soil Day for tomorrow, so you need to be out there celebrating, just so start that off. Cool Soil, as the name says, it's very much about soil health being the kind of the cornerstone of farming. And I think we've heard a lot today. Having a number is one thing, understanding where it comes from, having really great farming systems is what this is all about. And for the companies that you see on here, in some ways strange bedfellows to have in the same initiative, but it's for them very much about buying products which are ingredients for what they make and sell. This is not about carbon farming. This is about how do we get resilience, climate smart products that we can buy, and that's the cornerstone of it. You'll also see that there are farming system groups involved, because we know that we actually have to work very directly with farmers. Every farm is unique, every solution is unique, and every farm is at different stage of their journey, so that's a really important piece. And the Sustainable Food Lab as well, that global connection is absolutely integral in the program. And we'll talk a little bit about that we've heard today, but it's very much about we need to speak Australian, but we need to speak global too. So you saw this up before and we've talked about it a lot today, but those companies had all set really ambitious targets. They were out there leading many years ago when certainly some governments weren't. But they didn't know how to do it in terms of some of the measurement, how they really backed those numbers and understood it. And in the same way that these are also a complex supply chain. So just as each of those companies buy multiple ingredients, so too every farmer grows multiple commodities. So it became really complex really quickly. And our job was to solve how we actually reported that for the Scope 3 reporting. So our solution was built up around three things. We deliver farm emission, that's gone back. We deliver farm emission reporting, which is all benchmarked. Really important, know your number, but understand where it sits in the region and what on earth you can do about it. That practice and insight is really critical. It's critical for the farmers, obviously, in terms of what's your number, why is that your number? What have you done this year that might have driven it? What's the season said that's influencing that number? But also what have you done in that paddock for the last 5 years, which might be influencing it now? So that's really critical. And for the supply chain side of things, people in the glass offices think, I'll just start here and I've got a target here and all you have to do is draw the line. And what we really find is that they don't understand about the seasonal context of emission reporting, particularly intensities when it's all about emissions per tonne or emissions per kilo. So if you've got a great season right until the end where there's massive rain or there's drought, you've already outlaid your costs, you've outlaid your emissions, and you have nothing in your denominator to get your emission intensity low. The other thing I'd say about this is farmers don't sign up for long term. So the only thing that a farmer in CSI signs is a data sharing agreement, but that's sharing it with CSI program, which is backed by Charles Sturt Uni. No individual farm data goes through to the supply companies. And that's a really important thing. They nominate the regions they buy from, they nominate the crops they want reported, but we do not give them access to those farmers and that data. They're very comfortable getting a regional supply shed number. A couple of other pieces, obviously the science is important and it has to be relevant to industry, but that global piece is really important, and you can see why when we've got Mars and Kellogg's, PepsiCo sitting around the table, they have to be able to put Australian numbers up against Canada's numbers, US, Russia, anywhere else, and have a conversation that compares them. Let me just talk very quickly. We've got 200 farmers in the program at this stage. We started in 2018, so we've been going for a little while. We do soil sampling, we work with each of those farmers from 5 paddocks. We ask probably 30 questions, not only about your activity data and yield data, but also the practices and the paddock history, because that gives us the story. We've had a lot of engagement and retention of farmers in the program. They're actually really interested in going, why is this my number? What can I do about it? We support them in that practice change, but also in recognising what's really good now. And I think that's the other message we've heard today. Australia does lead this space in a lot of ways, but sometimes we just don't talk that up, and nor do we have the data to prove it. So that's really critical. And I will talk a little about the Cool Farm tool, and I'll show you some numbers. That's another calculator. We are calculator agnostic, but we do use that tool because that's the global tool that about 300 major food companies use. So we have to be in that game, but likewise we're talking to AIA about, we also can produce reports through the AIA platform so that a farmer can take that to the bank. So what does a farmer actually get? They get a report like this for every paddock in the program. On the left-hand side, and you possibly can't see that very clearly, but it talks about emission sources. So where are your big levers, where are your big problems, and where are your big opportunities? It shows them where they sit compared to every other farmer in that region. So that's start of the benchmarking. And on the right-hand side, there are 3 different aspects as well. So there's an emission intensity by tonne that comes through, and that's really important from the supply chain company. That's the language they speak. But a farmer's making decisions on a hectare basis, so they also get that number, and then the soil organic carbon side as well. So where are you sitting? What are the opportunities that this information is showing you about what other farmers in your region are achieving? So they might be doing great things, and we then talk about what are the practices associated with those great results, and likewise explaining why some of those results may be really high. Again, could be seasonal conditions. So it's not only important to know your number, you've got to understand why you've got it, what you can do about it, and then what's actually your best leverage point. So don't go after, the really small things, go after the big ticket items is where we're going. And from the company's perspective, as I said, they don't get individual farm data, they get supply shed data, and what they get is something we call an impact report. So what's happened in that season by the crops that we report, what are the practices that have gone into growing it, and also what are the history over time, so we track that too. And then every individual company, and this is the confidential piece to them, is they have nominated crops and reporting and tonnages, and they get allocated from the pool of Cool Soils tonnage. They get allocated specific pieces, and that's effectively what they book for their Scope 3, but also what they can move to customers. And it's a really important part of the MRV process is the allocation and the movement, because that's where the potential for greenwashing or double counting really comes into play, and that's a crucial piece of what we've focused on. So what have been the results? This just gives you a bit of an idea for last harvest. This is for wheat, so the emission intensity number was 211. It's a bit so what if you don't understand the context. It's a great number, by the way, and I'll show you why. But also, since the program started, that's a reduction of 20 kilos of CO2 equivalent. So that's really important. It does bounce around, but it's great to see that the program's having that impact. The practices are really important. So we're actually tracking practice change. So hectares, how many more people are growing a legume? How many more incorporating lime? These are important things. And for these global companies who are paying farmers in other countries to do things like minimum till, we can show actually incredibly high in Australia. And as I said, these last couple of slides are about showing where we are now. And for those in the room in the grains industry, this is a slide that CSIRO produced a few years ago to baseline the industry. So everything on this except the aqua is the CSIRO work. And it basically said a couple of things. Australia is actually doing really well. So that green bar is what CSIRO came up with. We've got some work to do in getting the numbers right from the World Food Lab Life Cycle Database, which is the other blue lines. And the CSI number is that aqua line. So when we're actually using real farm data and we're working very directly with farmers, that's where we sit. So it's a really great story to tell, and that's an important piece. It's also really important from the procurement perspective as well. So what we're actually hearing companies like Mars and PepsiCo say now is if I have an emission target, my immediate strategy might be to buy more from Australia because that's got a lower emission factor. So there's a real trade policy implication right now. That's the quickest way to reduce their emissions. Really interesting sort of change in dynamic. And the other thing, just to come back to that Cool Farm tool, is that I've shown you those first few numbers in the previous graph, but the last three column groups are the couple of versions of the global Cool Farm tool, which is 1 and 2, which gave reasonable handle numbers for Australia, but it was created with Europe and America in mind. It didn't have Australia-specific factors. We took that tool apart. We said, here's the scientific evidence that says these are the right emission factors, and this is on the right-hand side, the numbers that the regionalised tool came up with. So this is what the companies like Kellogg's and Mars and PepsiCo can use because it's generated from a global tool that's been regionalised. And that's about a 20% improvement just by making it right. So that's it for the initiative. We are expanding, going into lots of different crops, commodities and regions. I heard cotton and sheep talk today, so very keen to talk to you because we're moving into that space. Free for farmers, and we're happy to talk to anyone. Thank you.